All right, so this portion of my story is talking about my ability to hear, I guess, quote unquote, hear God and get directions from God. So this was probably had to be '01 or '02. And I was working at Big Idea Productions in Lombard, and lived in Wheaton. And remember, often I'd pray and just connect to God on my way in. And I would say God at this point too. It was still very Christian based, I would say. But again, I've always had that connection, so it wasn't ever that. To me, Jesus felt like a brother than this, Messiah. So I'm on the way to work, and I just pray, and I'm like, God, is there anything you want me to do today? And I hear, but it's not out loud, but I still hear it in my head. I want you to tell Dan I love him. And so, of course, I know right away which Dan is being referred to, and there were several Dans, and I was friends with all three of them, but I knew exactly which Dan it was. So I get to work, and I'm in HR, and so obviously it's an animation company. We had a production studio, so a lot of artists, and Dan was an artist, and very introverted, very, very quiet guy. I'm like, I wonder how this is gonna go. So I go up to his desk, and I'm like, hey, Dan, how are you doing? He's like, good, thanks, how are you? Good. I'm like, hey, I was wondering, would you like to grab lunch today? And he's like, yeah, I don't have any other plans. That sounds good. I was like, well, I'll come by, and then let's just go out and grab our lunch. If you have a lunch you brought, or, buy something, and we'll go out. Yeah, the office was in a mall. He's like, okay. So I meet him at his desk. We go out in the mall. We're chatting, and then, sitting down, eating out in the mall. And, time comes, and I'm just like, I got to tell him. So I said, well, Dan, this might sound strange to you, but I pray on my way to work. I talk to God. And this morning, God talked back. And I'd asked normally, I do this. What would you like me to do today? Or how can I help you? How can I be of service? And so today, God said, I want you to tell Dan I love him. So I said, Dan, God loves you. Now, does that have a meaning? and he really got choked up. And he said, I've not told anyone this here, but he goes, my wife died, and I feel responsible. I feel I should have done more. I could have done more. And it's just haunted me. And I felt God could never love me. And so, yeah, we both got choked up and teary-eyed, and I might now. But it was quite a moment, and he said, yeah, I really needed to hear that today. And that was that. The neat thing about Dan is that there was a colleague in HR, Cheryl, she's just a hoot. Complete opposite of Dan. Very gregarious and colorful and fun. Very direct, speaks her mind. And anyway, I had gotten another message thing about connecting Dan and Cheryl. So I did that, and they actually ended up getting married. And then I got to speak at their wedding and share Dan's story about what God asked me to do, and then how God asked me to connect the two of them. So that was pretty cool. And there are more stories of kind of God's interventions or messages to me too that you will here if you want to.